The Wild Wild West.
And then again, and then again, and then again.
Here we go. Now this is either we'll decide later. You're either on the Patreon or this is free on YouTube.
Okay.
Whatever. We left off at LBJ.
LBJ. First of all, there's an interesting tie-in. A person that ties together JFK, LBJ, and Nixon.
Is it my mother's cunt?
It's your mother's cunt.
Is it really?
No, it really wasn't.
Oh, God damn it.
No, there are some parts of history your mother's cunt did not figure into. There's only a few. But the person who's sort of that combines these three figures in an interesting way is Jackie O. Because, first of all, obviously she's connected to JFK because he fucked her.
Yeah.
But there's this great, first of all, and I've been to like every presidential library, not every one. I've been to a lot. And Nixon's has this really weird artifact. They always have these artifacts, like the actual written. So there's these notes. It's a letter written by Jackie O to Nixon right after JFK was shot. Like it's one of the first things she did. And it's like on hotel stationery. And it's just in her hand, and it's like many pieces, like little notepad pieces. She sat down and wrote a letter to Richard Nixon. Because the thing with all these families is they all hung out together. So even if they were political enemies, like if Kennedy and Nixon are debating, Pat Nixon and what's her name and Jackie hung out. They were all their families
Nixon's
traveled together.
Pat.
What's that?
His wife's name was Pat.
Patricia Nixon. Yeah.
Was she cute?
I mean, I don't.
Would you fuck her?
You know, ladies back then. Ladies.
Yeah.
She was a lady. With the hair.
Yeah. It just sucks. He's the cool guy has.
He was
Jackie.
he was desperately in love with her.
He's got Pat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really loved her very much, Patricia. The story about her that I love is that Nixon, she was a librarian. There's a lot of stories about presidents that have this in their history. He went to the library and there was this beautiful Patricia, young librarian, and he would go in there and talk to her. Been looking for the, Boswell's history biography of
How to Live with a Huge Cock.
Yes. Yes, I just don't know how to do it. And one day he went in there and he said, I just came to tell you that someday I'm going to marry you.
Oh, man.
And Patricia said, no, you're not.
Yeah.
I have a boyfriend. He goes, okay, who's this boyfriend? She goes, he lives in this town over, And he goes, how are you getting there? Are you going on a date? She goes, yeah, I have a date with him tonight. She goes, well, how are you getting there? She goes, I'm taking a bus. He goes, no, I'll drive. That's unsafe. So he would drive her to her dates.
Whoa.
And he would look after her. He's like, you're going to marry me someday. And so he just sort of was her friend, and he looked after her, and then he wore her down. Same thing with Truman and Bessie. Bessie, he wrote long letters to that we have now. And in one of the letters, he wrote and said, I want to marry you.
Yeah.
And she wrote back and said, geez, Harry, I'm just don't love you. I like you that way. And he wrote back and he said, I just want to thank you for not making fun of me when I asked you. So let's please remain friends. And they were friends for years.
And then he started killing
She
it.
was and she started looking at herself in the mirror and going, I'm not getting any younger.
Yeah.
And this dude might be something. So I don't know what went into it.
Who we were just looking at a guy. I was watching a thing on presidents before we left, and it is a theme where they try to get with a lady, and they're like, no, and then they're like, I'm just gonna be the fucking president.
I'm gonna be the best guy ever.
Yeah. It's what happened in when you saw the movie Vice? It's my favorite part of the movie with Cheney.
We'll get to them.
Getting
a
DUI,
his wife,
getting a DUI and getting a fight.
He was a fuck up.
And then she's like, you're a loser. I'm going to leave you. And he's like, I'll become the greatest man of all time.
Well, she made him that. Made him that. But I'll get to that because I met that lady. So
wait, what was the story of the letter Jackie sent?
So Jackie, when John was dead and she still got his blood on her pink dress, she wanted to take it off. It was a nice fucking dress. She's like, I'm not going to wear this for one fucking day. She kept it on. And the thing that she had his brains in her hand, and she walked up to somebody in the operating room and said, does anybody need this for anything?
It's like an IKEA.
She had the president's brain in her.
Yeah.
And she was like,
I found this screw on the ground.
Yeah,
we might have missed some.
And they're like, oh.
Like, oh, shit.
That doesn't. She's like, is that important? They're like, yeah, it's pretty important.
That's his.
And they're
pretty
like,
big.
she's like, you want to put it back in? They're like, no, you go ahead and eat it. And she ate his brain. It's true. It's true. You ever seen the autopsy photos? In the background, you can see her.
You can see
his brain.
Jackie stuffing one down.
Sweetmeats, or whatever you call it. So she wrote. It just reminds me, and this isn't presidential, but this is one of the funniest things that Nick DiPaolo ever said to me. I know I made fun of him in the last one, so I want to praise him. I love the guy. It's like my brother. We used to live together, and I was telling him about this thing that I had heard about. The thing about Nick DiPaolo is that you tell him about something, and he finds the joke. So the thing I told him about was that there's somewhere in Asia they love monkey brains, and the best way to enjoy monkey brains is when they're still alive. So there's these tables with little like skull-shaped holes in them.
Yeah.
And they put the monkey up there and they cut the top of it and you just cut it open and you eat it with a little stylish fork. And I said this to Nick and he pretended to be one of those guys. He's like, I'm sending mine back. It's retarded. Like that would make it taste bad. This one's retarded. I want my money back. Okay, so LBJ... no, so Jack's dead, and Jackie writes Nixon.
Yeah.
And she says, listen, I know that you're going to charge ahead and try to be president. Like, I'm thinking about you right now. With my husband dead, you're the first person I thought of. You and Pat and your family. And I think about what we've all sacrificed of ourselves in order to achieve these great historical moments and in order to be president. And I lost my husband to this. This killed him. And I don't want this to happen to you. You're a good man. You've got a good family. And I'm just saying, this is me saying now, cool it and take what you got and retire and be a family man because it's going to kill you too.
Yeah.
She wrote this to him.
Wow.
Great moment.
Wow.
Now, there's another thing. When LBJ was president, he was very much in love with Jackie. Everyone loved Jackie.
Yeah.
So LBJ loved Jackie, and there's a tape you can hear of him calling Jackie from the White House, drunk, in the middle of the night. You hear her like, hello? And he's like, Jackie, Jackie, God damn it, I love you, Jackie. And you hear her go, Mr. President?
Oh, what a betrayal, dude.
It's just beautiful.
What the
It's
fuck?
just beautiful. Jackie, I don't know what to do anymore. Mr. President? She's like, in a nice nightgown. Anyway.
Did you ever watch that movie recently with...
I couldn't, as soon as I heard her doing the accent, I'm like, it's just too much.
See, I never heard Jackie.
I don't like biopics. I don't like
really?
it so much. Yeah, not usually.
I'm trying
but
to
anyway.
think. Yeah.
LBJ... I told you this story last time after we stopped, but the two stories I also read and saw in his library. One was that a Mexican woman who lived in his home district in Texas, her husband died. He was killed in World War II, killed in action, and his coffin was sent back to her hometown, and nobody would bury it because he's Mexican. None of the undertakers, none of the cemeteries would take his body because they're only white people. And so she wrote to LBJ, who was at the time her senator, and she said, is there anything you can do? I can't bury my war hero husband, He's just a regular fucking corporal who got shot, And so they have this letter, and then you see his reply. He says, I'm really sorry to inform you that I can't force those people to do something they don't want to do. And I know it's not enough, but all I can do is bury your husband in Arlington Cemetery with full honors. So that guy's in Arlington. So that's the kind of guy.
Cool.
And that's a quiet story of his. You know what I mean? He was a principled guy. He was a fucked up guy. He was weird. But that's something he did. And
was he? I asked you this before, I think, but was he like? Because he got the civil rights thing going, right?
Yeah, he did. He
did
passed
the civil
everything.
rights bill.
He used JFK's death to pass everything on civil rights. It was always his intention. He was a integrationist guy. He was a guy who wanted an integration. He lived in Texas, and he was a Southern Democrat.
Yeah.
So he was pragmatic about it.
Is he
but
a big guy? He was big, right?
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, he was
I don't know why I
stocky.
think of him as big.
He was a farm guy. He was a real fucking country guy, and he did stuff like he had these dogs. And he would lift his dogs by the ears and show the press, look at my dogs. And everybody's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Don't do that.
I guess that's my dog.
Dude, is there anything more unsettling when someone grips their dog up like that?
Yeah,
like
I've never even heard of that.
Well, just even grabbing it by the back of the neck.
But by the ear, he was like a hound, and he held him by the ear. Look at my dog.
Dude, when it's not a puppy and someone grabs it by the back of the neck, it's like, dude, stop.
And also, he used to make a lot of his phone calls on the toilet. And he would have meetings on the toilet, like he made a lot of big decisions sitting on the toilet. And they'd talk to him, Mr. President, what do you want to do about Korea? And he's like, I don't give a goddamn or whatever, and so Vietnam and all that stuff. And the thing about LBJ that to me is like an important thing is that he was an empathetic president. In other words, he felt when other people felt. Okay, this is my problem with some other presidents, is that they don't have that. They don't actually. There is a famous photograph you can find of him where one of his, I think it was his son-in-law, I think it was Chuck Todd, was who ended up being a senator from Virginia. Turned into a real douche later, but he sent a tape of, he was a lieutenant in the army in Vietnam, and lieutenants were just like having to take platoons out and just get them all massacred. Yeah. So he just sent a reel-to-reel tape to his father-in-law, the president, describing a bloody day in Vietnam and how many guys he lost and how bad it was. And there's a photograph of LBJ listening to this tape, and he's just got his glasses off and he's just sobbing because he knows that he's in charge of this. Yes.
To some
extent.
Kept
it going. He still thought it was right, or he couldn't undo it. I don't know.
I think,
but it made him feel
that's
a
the
lot.
Conspiracies, though.
Well, I have my uncle is very retired. He's in his 80s, but he was a commander in the Navy, and he was a CB, an instruction battalion. He was an engineer, and they went to Vietnam early when we were still. It was called we were just sending advisors, and so he was sent there to build for them, and he got a bunch. He went around to his Navy friends and talked them into going to Vietnam for this venture. It was not a war yet. And then it turned into a war under his feet. And all the fucking guys he brought over there got killed. Mm. And then he came back to the States and had to tell all their, apologize to their families. So like there's a lot of guys who are like in those command positions who just, they're in a war.
Yeah.
But so that was, so LBJ ran. So he took over for Jack, and then he ran in 64.
Yeah, I believe he did.
And he beat who? These are the guys I don't know who LBJ's vice president was.
I think he might have lost to Nixon his first.
No, he only ran once for president in 64. And technically...
Yeah, he served from 63 to 69.
Yeah, so 64, who did he beat? Who was the Democrat? Who was the Republican nominee? Because Nixon sat it out. Nixon didn't run this time.
Goldwater.
Barry Goldwater.
Barry Goldwater.
Okay. So, but then when it got to be 68, this is another. He did tough things, LBJ. Like he took it on the chin.
I mean, Vietnam and civil rights are two of the biggest. I mean, it's
huge
conflicts. Yeah.
And then he did something that no president has, some presidents maybe have done, but the way he did it was very dramatic, which was that in 68, he just knew he didn't have the confidence of the people anymore. He knew that he had to face, it was a very Nixonian moment. He had to face that he had lost the confidence of the people and that he wasn't popular anymore, and everything was fucked. And so he made this speech where he said, I will not seek, nor will I accept my party's nomination for a second term as president. Like he declared, I'm not running a second time. That's fucking rare.
Yeah.
That's rare. Most guys just do it because you're supposed to. When I worked at Conan's show early, I was a writer for Conan the first 2 years. We did one bit that I loved. It was my favorite bit we ever did. It was just new inventions. It was just weird inventions. So one of them, and it was one that I wrote, it was a machine that it's a big belt that you wear, and then there's a probe in your ass, And when you fart, so you're not embarrassed by the smell, by the sound.
Yeah.
Instead of your fart, you hear that speech. So we had a guy like there and he farts and you hear, I will not seek nor shall I accept. Anyway, so LBJ didn't run again, and in 68, and then that's when everything fell apart. Bobby ran and was running away with the nomination.
Yeah.
And then he got shot in California.
Yeah.
Replaced by McGovern, who nobody liked, and Nixon ran against McGovern.
How close to the election did Bobby get shot?
It's a good question. It was California primary. He was there for he'd been winning everything.
Yeah. Oh, so it was in the primaries.
It was in the primaries.
Yeah.
And
what was the name of the guguy who shot him? It was like something
Sirhan. Yes, and there's a picture, a famous picture of him laying there, and there was so if you look at the picture, there's a guy holding him. You see that guy holding his head?
Yeah.
He's a busboy. A just Mexican busboy working in a hotel. And it was in the kitchen. Like he had just made a speech and he was coming through. Just to back up for a second with Bobby, because Bobby was an incredible guy. Bobby had a fluid mind of a crackling brain. Like he was like, John was, moved slow and made careful moves. And Bobby was passionate, When my mother, when I first got an iPhone, first time I'd ever held that thing, I took it to my mother's house, and my mother was a computer programmer, but this item was like, she's like, it's a phone. And I go, name any image or moment, recorded moment.
That's what she went with?
What's that?
And that's the one she went with?
Just no, let me finish. I said, name any recorded moment in history.
Yeah.
And she said, when Martin Luther King was killed, Bobby Kennedy was about to have a rally, give a speech at a rally of all black people. It was a black audience, like in some city. And he got the news. And he had to tell the audience that MLK had been assassinated. And he, off the cuff, said some things about it and gave a speech, which was just very moving. And I just went, fucking RFK, MLK.
Yeah.
And played it for her. And she was like, wow. What is happening? Yeah.
That's awesome. So, I thought, I was close with my guess. I thought your mom was going to be like, if I could see anything in the world right now,
it would be him getting
show me
killed.
Him dead on the ground.
He's show me that motherfucker
I'd like to see it.
With blood on his face. So he was shot coming out of they were taking him through the kitchen. Sirhan shoots him. And this busboy is the one who catches him. It just was in a melee of people. So a guy who had nothing to do with anything, senor. So he's got Kennedy's head in his lap, and he looks down at him. And he never spoke about it. Like he wouldn't. Press used to ask him. He just refused to talk about it because he felt the moment was very personal. But he finally, I think the guy might be dead, but I saw an interview with him where he said what happened, which is that Bobby said he just asked him, do you have a rosary? He knew he would because he's fucking Mexican. He said, do you have a rosary? And he did. And they gave him a rosary, and he basically took his last rites.
Holy shit.
He gave Bobby a shot at a Catholic little death.
Damn.
Sirhan went to prison. I think he's still alive. I think he's still in prison. So he shows up in a great book by the guy who invented profiling in the FBI, the guy who invented criminal profile.
Okay.
Richard Kessler, something like that. This guy wrote this book. He was the first guy in the FBI to come up with the idea of figuring out why killers do what they do. They didn't used to do that.
The guy for the Mindhunter show?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. He invented this thing.
Yes.
So, and the book is great because the book starts with a guy who murdered a serial killer who killed somebody in in Sacramento somewhere in some neighborhood, killed a lady, went in her house, killed a lady, and then killed another lady the next day. And so they flew this guy in who had become famous for this. He took one look at the murder scene. He said, you're looking for a white man in his 40s who has a big beard. He's living in his car. that's filled with newspapers and trash from McDonald's. And if you don't catch him, he's going to do this every day. And they went and found the guy exactly on that. So then when that guy was caught, he did the next part of his job, which was he interviewed him to find out, because these guys love talking. And he asked him all the questions so they understand these guys better. And he asked the guy, how did you pick your victims? That's a key thing that's in finding out how they're going to pick the next one. And he said, I would just go to any house, and if the door was unlocked, I'd kill anybody in there. So it wasn't like she looked like my mom.
Yeah.
And so he said, I'm putting this in the first chapter to just tell you, you're going to just lock your doors. Please lock your door. Yeah. Okay, so that guy.
It's funny to just ruin the profiling thing.
Yes.
He's like, oh no, I don't.
No, if the door's unlocked.
What are you talking about?
If you're dumb, I'll kill you. But anyway, all that, I know I'm getting away from presidents. No, the point is, that guy, once he learned this thing of like talking to the guys, he realized we have all the most notorious killers in federal prisons. I want to go talk to them. And he couldn't get permission because everyone in the FBI said that's macabre and it's inappropriate. Yeah. So then he realized, why am I asking? Just go to a federal prison, show him he's like a gold FBI badge. Yeah. So the first guy he talked to was Sirhan. Wow. He shows up and he just says, I want to see him. And Sirhan comes.
Was he like, the kitchen was unlocked? He said the kitchen was unlocked. I didn't even know who the fuck that guy was.
So he didn't ask. I don't know if he asked him that question, but he talked to Sirhan for a couple hours, and it was a dead end. He just he rambled, and he talked about his conspiracy, what he thought was, why he did it. He has a weird story that he thinks why he did it. And he didn't learn anything. And he thought maybe this isn't a good idea. He was about to give up on the science of this. And then right before Sirhan left, he stopped and he took off his shirt, because he works out in prison, and he goes, hey, what do you think of Sirhan now? And he showed his muscles, and he went like, oh, he's fucking vain. He's vain. He wants people to look at him. And that unlocked, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So like that Hannibal Lecter thing, what does he do? He kills women. No, that's incidental. Yeah. What is the point of the guy? So anyway, that's Sirhan. Kill Robert Kennedy.
Sirhan's got to be dead, right?
When was it? That was 60. He still goes out for parole every few years. And
they gotta let him out. Oh, he's got a couple years, dude.
Yeah,
he's the best is the guy who shot. Oh, well, I guess we'll get to him.
Well, Mike Sweeney, comedian, did the best joke ever. He wrote for Conan for years, but he was a great stand-up. And I'm saying his name, so I think I can steal his joke. Mike Sweeney. He used to do a joke about Sirhan at his first parole hearing. He said, I think if Robert Kennedy was alive today, he would say that I should be let go. And he goes, boy, just of all the bad luck. It's the one guy who would have stuck up for him. Turns out it's the guy he shot. Anyway, Sirhan kills Robert Kennedy, and Democrats go to the fucking convention in Chicago. Richard Daley and the fucking yippies show. And then we had another time like this. Far way out left yippies. Making a noise and wanting it to be a riot at the Democratic National Convention, not the Republican. They were like Nixon. There's another time like that it was like, yeah, we all know Nixon's a dick, but let's fuck with the Democrats. Let's go after the liberal side of things. And there was gas,
there's horses running over people.
Insane. So it was like the Democrats came across as this fucking chaotic bunch.
Yep.
They end up with McGovern and nobody gives a fuck. It's just this bad sort of like fucking the Democrats represent chaos and drugs and all this stuff. And there wasn't a thing of like, let's get together behind McGovern to beat Nixon. That just was not going to happen. So Nixon fucking finally, after all those years of his long life in politics, having been vice president for fucking Eisenhower, having been a senator and during the McCarthy hearings, all this stuff, he ends up being president of the United States in 1960, and he gets the people. He does the moral majority, the people or what do you call them? The silent majority. The silent majority, and all the guys that hard hats who hated hippies, and he counted on that, and it won, and he won.
Yeah, it's coming again. We're doing the same thing.
Same thing.
Exact same thing.
Same thing. So then you get to Nixon through 4 years, and he gets to 72. Now
I have a question. Was the press gay back then, like they are now? Were they like totally like?
Well, it was a different bunch of guys, like Dan Rather and fucking, I mean, I'm forgetting all these guys' names.
It was never this partisan, though, right?
No, because there was the CBS News, which was Walter Cronkite, and there was NBC and ABC. That was the news. Was you chose between three dudes, and there was David Brinkley, and they had Meet the Press. They had some stuff they even still have now.
Yeah,
but it was the press was centralized. There wasn't this sort of like the written press was pretty out there. But the TV news was what everybody was really following. And so everyone watched the same news, and then we argued. So it was different. And you never had a sense that the press, to answer your question, no, they really weren't gay. Shane, I don't agree with using gay that way. He's even making me sound gay because I'm so upset with him. My God. So... Well, like Cronkite. Cronkite was a picture.
It's funny to actually be gay when you're being gay.
It's the best.
Like to be mad about something. Get a coaster for that.
Stop it. Yeah. Stop it. Especially this angry gay. Stop it. Shane.
What's more terrifying?
No, that would be if you had two gay dads. There would have been one who's like, Shane, just don't make him mad. Shane, what the fuck are you saying to him? Shane.
It could be the most terrible. That's the most scary getting yelled at.
By your gay dad.
I
knew a gay. I knew a number of gay dads and two moms when I was raising my kids. A lot of their friends had gay dads, and I saw it's the same as any other stereotype. There are many kinds of heterosexual parents. There are soft-hearted, useless heterosexual parents. There are distracted, narcissistic, I think I can change my kid's life parents that are heterosexuals, and there's just fucking like got it, gets it, doing the tough work heterosexual parents. And it's the same in my experience with gay moms and gay dads. I've known gay dads who are just like hard tack fucking, I'm not fucking this up.
Yeah.
But also I know it's his life. That like I've known so many kinds. But they all sound like this. But anyway. Not really.
Kick the ball.
Not
Kick
really,
it, Tyler. Go.
It's more fun.
The fucking T-ball
Well, that's
game.
what a straight dad sound like.
Yeah.
But so
gay dads are great.
Gay dads are great. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Walter Cronkite has two great moments that show you what the press was back then. There's the moon landing, and there's Kennedy getting killed. These, and again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see both of these. So the moon landing is just they show the fucking footage of Neil touching down, which didn't happen. They didn't never land on the moon. And then they cut to Cronkite.
Oh, what's his name? That was your boy. That was Kubrick, dude. He did the moon landing.
Kubrick did the moon.
Yeah.
That's why they gave him all the lenses. Yeah, he used the lenses for Barry Lyndon. It's true. Barry Lyndon is a great movie by Stanley Kubrick, and it takes place in like the 1600s, and he wanted it to look like that, so he used no electric lights, but he needed lenses that drink a huge amount of light, and he got NASA to give him moon lenses.
So he did do the moon landing.
Yes, nobody's ever been on the moon. Nobody's ever been on the moon. 100%.
You see there's some clues in The Shining.
Huh?
There's clues that
about
he
the
did
moon?
It. Yeah.
I don't believe this. I think they went to the moon.
But we'll see.
But
no, I think somebody was trying to argue that in like some Chinese astronomy, they found they satellite images of where people landed.
Yes.
And they're like, why would we help cover this?
By the way, they went up like 20 times. It's not even that big a deal. But so Cronkite, when they landed on the moon, you just cut to him and he's got this big childish grin on his face. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't say, this is a marvelous moment. He just reports, and Neil has landed. A man has landed on the moon. He says the facts, but he's got a bit, you can see the feeling, but he doesn't say it. And then the other moment that is just devastating is when Kennedy dies. He says, he gets the report, he gets it in his hand, and he says, President Kennedy has died. He died at 12 o'clock, and he takes off his glasses to look at the clock above him because he's reading, to look at the clock above him, and says, and that's 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. He just reports that Kennedy has died and reports the time, and he looks at his local clock, and then he puts his glasses back on, and he goes,
sports.
And he just swallows. Vice President Lyndon Johnson is to be sworn into. And there's this moment between where he's taking in that the president of the United States is dead, which without even thinking about who it was just horrible. Yeah. And then that he probably knew him, you know? So, but that was he didn't grandstand. You know, you watch the news now and they're just like, you know, and they're just feeling shit.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. They are not supposed to, you know, like when I worked for Letterman, the Yankees were in the World Series. And I got caught up in it, and because I'm a New Yorker, I'm a Boston guy, but I just got caught up in it. It was
fun.
So we took Larry Bud Melman, this character that Letterman had, to the game and interviewed the players. And then I got to be in the press box during the game. And me and a friend of mine who was a writer were sitting there watching the game, and we're cheering when the Yankees hit. And then we look, and everyone's staring at us like, "What the fuck are you doing? You don't cheer in the press box." Like it was like we're all fans of something, but shut the fuck up. I think that shit's gone. I think that's all really
certainly.
Gone. But anyway, so Nixon serves.
Also, one more thing about Kennedy, dude. Why go to the moon? It's probably my favorite speech.
We do things.
Why? Yeah. We choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard.
Because it's hard, yes. Dude. And he also, in one of his speeches about them, he had a great joke.
He also, in there, he goes, "Why does Rice play Texas?" That gets me every time. I'm just like, dude, why are they playing? They get fucking killed every year.
That's right.
And they're still doing it.
Yes. Kennedy also had a great parable he used to tell. There's a lot of speeches that are lost because a lot of these guys, they didn't record every speech. But one of his, he liked telling jokes about Irish guys. So did Reagan. They had that in common. They both used like patty jokes.
Yeah.
So he tells a story during his moon mission, when trying to get the money and the country behind the moon. And he talks about these three Irish guys walking along the leas of whatever, you know, just crossing the great green grasses of Ireland. And then they get to a stone wall. And they go, should we climb the wall or should we go turn back and go home? And one of them takes his friend's hat off his head and throws it over the wall and says, I guess we're going. So that was part of Kennedy's thing. It's not that good.
No,
but anyway,
that's cool.
So, and then Nixon's president when they land on the moon. And there's in his library in Yorba Linda, California, where he was born and raised, and the little house that he was born in is there at the library. There's a phone, which is the phone that he talked to the moon on. It's the White House. They took the White House phone that he made. It's just a fucking beige phone with a big white button and a big red hold button. I don't know if he put them on hold, but he, talked to, well, it's just wonderful that you're up there.
You're up on the moon.
You're up there and Jack is dead. Fuck him. And
nothing could stop me now.
Yeah, no. So he was president when that happened, and so 68 turns into the 72, and now the country's really fucking changing. Everything's in color now. The TV's in color. Everything's, hippies are starting to get old.
Yeah, they're starting to wash out a little.
Yes.
What's sadder than that?
Two things happened to the hippies. First of all, they killed a bunch of them. They killed a bunch of their leaders. But they also got the drugs started to take a bad effect. They went from mind liberating pot to fucking heroin and cocaine, which are dark drugs. They became dark
evil
high.
Hippies.
Yes, and then some of them grew up and had families and wanted to be rich. So, and there's another thing you can find on YouTube that's great are the debates between Abby Hoffman and Rubin. He was Jane Fonda's husband, and he was a congressman eventually. But he was one of the Jerry Rubin, I think his name is. He was one of the yippies. He's one of the. He was a wicked radical, and he used to be one of those guys. We're not taking his shit anymore, and the president come here and kiss my fucking ass. Yeah. And Abby Hoffman had
the
best.
Became a congressman.
Yes, Abby Hoffman was Abby Hoffman said the N-word constantly during speeches because he would just be with a bullhorn and talking about "fuck you," and he was like really inappropriate, and he was really a lit up nut. Abby Hoffman. Him and Jerry Rubin were like the East Coast, West Coast hippies. Later, Rubin became a huge capitalist. He became a yuppie. That's where the term yuppie came from. And the two of them debated. They traveled together to different universities, and they would debate their generation's new predicaments of, do we keep the fight going of trying to get out of wars and trying to be Democrats and trying to liberate this country? And the other ones were like, we got to grow up, and we got to. And what Rubin was saying was, we need a candidate. We need to win an election. So we need to go to the center, and we need to talk to big business and small business, and we need to talk about being a practical, because that's the liberal dream. And this became Clinton. This is where Clinton came from that. From the hippies saying, okay, we're not going to just protest our whole lives and be these losers. At one point, they had a huge amount of power.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, they had a lot of power. They held this vigil around the Lincoln Memorial. And I mean, think of the time, because MLK gave this speech there and they fucking shot the guy. And I remember being at the Lincoln Memorial with my kids and saying that this spot, the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, is it's a place you can really understand American history from. Because you look that way, you see Washington, and that was the creation of our country, right? And then you see the Capitol, which was the growth of this legislature. But there is Washington, which was the creation of the country and revolution. And then there was Lincoln, who kept it together as a union, who that was the second step. Yeah, we're our own country, but also, even if millions die, we need to be a union. Okay, that's what Lincoln did. And then who stood here and made this place even important for a new generation? MLK stood there, and there was a sea of people, and he had to fight for, inside of that union that Lincoln preserved, that Washington started. He said, we have to fight for our rights in here. He was the first one to say there's a civil way to fight for, to push for our rights legally and through quiet, through nonviolent resistance. So this is a huge place.
It's firing me up, dude.
Right? This country has
cool,
an incredibly romantic history. And there's another way to look at all of this, apparently, but this is the way that I was taught it, and I see it again as a story. It's a story. So, but then after he'd been shot, and all that became rubble. Like that, all that was pushed aside, and now that we're in a fucking melee war, Nixon's president. It feels like forever. It just feels like Nixon's never not going to be president. He was a psychotic. He's taking drugs. He's drinking a lot. He was so racist. He was like, there's tapes of him saying about Italians. He's like, I don't like Italians. They smell different. He says that on tape. And
he was right.
Well, depends on if they've been cooking. But so Nixon. So the mall and the memorial is just besieged by strung out hippies, students, and veterans who came home from the war and hate the war now, and have Ron Kovic and all these guys in wheelchairs going, what the fuck did I do this for?
Yeah.
This certainly isn't World War II. What are we winning here? When is this war going to end? And it was just a mess. And in the middle of all that, in the middle of the night one night, Nixon got in his limo and drove into the middle of that. He went to the Lincoln Memorial. Do you know this?
No.
There's footage of this too. He was looking out his window. You fucking kids. The fuck did they know? But it was breaking his heart. Yeah. Because even though he had the hard hats, and even though he had the silent majority, just like now, nobody wants the silent majority. People want the cool people to like them. Twitter is like 39 people and 60,000 bots. It's very few people. It's a bunch of kids that are fighting and saying this extremist shit. And the huge, vast amount of the liberal part of this country is not into any of that. But nobody's satisfied with just knowing that the average person gets it, and that when you really deal with human beings on a real level, they're going to do the right thing. I believe that. I have a lot of confidence in human and American, just the way we are as people. But these folks that yell and scream. They really people want them to like them. And so Nixon, even though he was winning by a landslide everywhere, he's looking out that window and he's looking at those kids because it's your kids. It's like if everybody likes you, but your kids think you're a piece of shit, it just eats at you. It just destroys you. And so he got in the limousine, and he drove into the middle of the protesters and he got out and he talked to them. And there's just this footage of him like talking. He's in his stupid suit. And they're like, man, you don't get, man, you're just like, you're like an imperialist piece of shit, man. And he's like, well, I understand your point, but I mean, do you just think we just give up? I mean, what happened to this country? And they talked. They really talked. I don't know what it did to him, but he did get us out of that war.
You ever see?
Nixon did pull us out of that war. Now, he did it in a way that is horrible, which is that he bombed Cambodia. And this is the story that I heard, is that he had this very specific strategy, which was he starts bombing Cambodia, which came out of nowhere. It was like, what? And then he let it be.
But wasn't Cambodia was where they had the Ho Chi Minh Trail, right?
I don't know.
I think they knew they could use Cambodia. Like they were using these trails in other countries.
Right, but still, it was a country we had no right. Yeah. We were not at war with Cambodia, but we were bombing Cambodia as if it would be like if people were escaping to Canada and we were like, so fuck it. Or if Canadians were at war and some of them escaped into the States and whatever the other country was, just started bombing fucking Wisconsin. Like, dude, you can't just do that. And so many people were getting killed. And Nixon, what he did is he let it be leaked that no one could get in touch with him, like that his aides were trying to tell him to stop bombing, and that he cut off communication, and was that he wanted them to think he'd gone cuckoo. And that's how they got the Vietnamese to the table and got a peace. It wasn't a good peace. They left.
Oh, he faked that he was nuts?
That's what I heard.
That's good.
I don't know.
Well, that's history. Reddit, that's how you hear history.
Google, I don't know.
But it's another thing about the Vietnam. I feel like Eisenhower, when he left, was like the military-industrial complex. That was Vietnam.
Yes.
That got us to now. I was like, oh, now we pulled out of Afghanistan. Where are these guys going to get their money? Mm-hmm. Hey, $33 billion to Ukraine. Like, it's just nonstop. Well,
that's the other side. You have your like political left that has more power than they do people, right? Because they're captivating people's like anxiety. But then on the other right, you have all these people that are doing fucked up things.
Yeah.
That also are untouchables. And there are only a few people with just a little bit of interest, a little bit of money, and so they're making all this crazy stuff happen.
That's jumping ahead.
I don't know much about it, but anyway. But so Nixon.
But it seems to me if you speak out against it, you get shot in the head or Watergated.
Yes.
Which is kind of what's happened. I could be wrong.
Yes.
That seems to be the underlying theme. Like he got out of that war and then they couldn't shoot him in the head.
I don't believe in conspiracies, but what I do believe is that there's a shift in the hive mind of America, so that if certain people that get in a position where they're in trouble, like Nixon did, the next person he goes to is going to be like, nah, man. Like, you don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
Like this story I heard about Caligula. Caligula was a terrible leader who was an absolute leader because everybody behind him had built the emperorship of Rome into a huge thing. You couldn't touch the emperor. He was like a god.
Yeah.
And Caligula made himself a god.
And then a crazy guy took.
He was insane. Caligula was insane. And
did he have his horse in the Senate, or was that
he
Nero?
made his horse in Senate?
That's pretty sick.
And so Caligula, one of the emperor's duties each day is to give the watchword to the head of the army, and the watchword is like the code word for the whole Roman army for the next week or whatever it is. So somebody asks him, "What do you want to be the code today?" And it was the head of the army, this guy who was like his bodyguard. And he thought it was funny, so he'd say, "Give us a kiss." He wanted everybody to have to say, "Give us a kiss." And so that all the Roman guards would have to say each other, "Give me a kiss," in order to like pass one guard to the next. And it was that guy that killed him.
Yeah, that guard.
It was that guard who was just like, he fucking shivved him just, like the fucking American meat.
It is funny when those guys do get killed.
Yeah.
Anytime a dictator gets killed, I mean, it's sad. It's always sad to watch. Like Gaddafi was sad.
It was really sad.
Gaddafi was sad.
Yeah, he's just with the blood.
Yeah,
and
Saddam was.
Saddam
People
is hanging,
screaming.
Some guys are screaming. And he looks at one of them and he goes, "Shut up." It's true. You see him coming, and he's grumpy. He's like, "This is such bullshit." He's not like, "Oh," that's what everyone's fantasy is. He's like, "Oh, I wish I had."
Yeah.
But he just comes in and some guy screams.
Everyone's-
and he goes, "Shut up."
Just
And
a
then they
room of
kick the
dudes
fucking-
yelling.
Kick the bench away and he hung.
He must have been so pissed on 9/11.
Yeah.
He probably was watching TV just like, oh,
You guys,
fuck,
that's
don't
gonna
fuck
be
with
me. Okay, so
Nixon. I don't know shit about Ford or Carter.
okay, so Nixon resigns. I will resign the presidency.
So wait, I don't even understand Watergate.
So Watergate was it started as a very simple thing, which was there's some guys that Nixon had a committee, the committee to reelect the president, which is CREEP. CREEP was literally their acronym. So CREEP sent some burglars to the Democratic National Committee's office, which was in Watergate Hotel. Watergate Hotel is in like a complex of office buildings. And they stole some papers from there. And this kind of shit was happening a lot. But Nixon was on drugs, paranoid, had a list of enemies. He just went. His thing came apart. Is really what happened.
Yeah.
These guys took some papers. It wasn't a big deal, but he immediately tried to control it because he was like, we're quashing this, we're killing this, right?
Yeah.
And somebody said, well, we got this guy. If he talks, we're all fucked. And Nixon says, what does he want? And they have them on tape. Somebody says he'll do it for $1 million, and he says, can we get the $1 million? And it's Nixon saying that was like the smoking gun. Was like, we'll give him $1 million if he wants it. Like,
well, give him $1 million. What are you even talking about?
If you're president, you can't say that out loud. It's crazy. But he had too much. He wasn't delegating enough, and so one by one, the investigative reporters at the time were really diligent, and they turned against a lot of pressure. They turned guy after guy after guy down until finally they got the guys close to him, and he didn't have. He knew
is the guy they were going to pay is that Deep Throat?
Yes,
that's the.
Well, no.
Is that just
Deep Throat is a guy who was in the system who just who saw everything that was going on, and was leaking it. It's just one of the dumb burglars, one of the guys, and there was this guy G. Gordon Liddy involved, who was a weird CIA guy who used to put his finger over a candle and burn it, and fucking
like,
psycho.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, Liddy is a great guy to look up. G. Gordon Liddy. So Nixon knew that if they impeached him, they had the votes. That's another time where things were. I want to go back because there's a guy I remembered now. Which is one of my not countrymen, but citymen from Boston is Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House for many, many years. And he was Speaker, I think, during Nixon, but he was during Kennedy. So he was a Boston politician, and so was Kennedy. And there's just going to tell you this one story about Tip O'Neill. No. So Tip was worked with Kennedy in Boston for years, and there was some shifty guy named Patty O'Brien or something, some shifty Irishman who would, every time they had like a big banquet or something, he'd always get in there and he'd be like, hey, how you doing, Tip? And he's like, how does Patty O'Brien get in everything? And he was at Kennedy's inaugural, Tip, and he was Speaker of the House, so he was really close to the front. Yeah. But Patty O'Brien was had better seats than him, and he saw Kennedy walking up to take his speech, and Patty threw his hand up and he saw Kennedy look at him.
How the fuck are you here?
And like a year later, he was at some big event for Kennedy, and they were showing footage from him and taking the oath of office, and he asked Kennedy, "What were you thinking when you were becoming the president?" And he said, I got to be honest with you, I was thinking, how the hell did Patty O'Brien get those seats?
That's awesome.
Tip O'Neill wrote a book called Man of the House that's fucking so entertaining because it covers all these guys that he served with. Okay, Nixon. So he's
out.
Gerald Ford is a really weird president
Yeah.
because he didn't want to be president.
He was
ever.
just Nixon's vice president.
He wasn't even just Nixon's vice president. He was the Senate Majority Leader.
Oh.
He was just a senator
Wait,
from Michigan with no interest in being a fucking
Who was
president.
Nixon's VP?
Spiral Agnew.
And he got ousted.
He
with
got
him?
thrown out because he was a fucking crook.
Yeah, he was with him.
They got rid of Agnew and they're like, just get Ford. I think Ford just filled in. He had no, he was like, what? I'm vice president? I don't want to be fucking
That
vice
came
president.
out of nowhere, too.
And yes, out of nowhere, suddenly he's vice president. And now suddenly he's the fucking president.
Yeah.
So now he's the president of the fucking Republican Party, and Nixon. This is just a massive trauma to the country, and I remember it. I remember Nixon, and Watergate was like a huge part of my youth. Now, when I grew up, when I was a kid, I lived in Mexico, and from when I was, I know, like I'm aware that that's like not
Pennsylvania
cool.
crushes Mexico.
Yes.
You guys are dying to get to PA, dude.
Yes.
We occasionally go down there
Yes.
and get sunburned.
That's right.
All right, so you're down in Mexico.
I'm in Mexico, and I moved. I was a baby when my parents moved to Mexico. My dad's Mexican, and then my parents, when I was about 7, moved to Boston, outside of Boston. And I remember coming to America. I remember my first memories were in Mexico in the 70s. So you think Mexico's bad now. In the 70s, it was like my mom only made carnation milk with powder because the milk was always rotten because there was no refrigeration, was just not good. It was it was a hot place. It was also beautiful. My memories are very beautiful from Mexico and still are. It's a wonderful country.
Yeah, of course.
Which is, and the thing is, they work really hard there, but their government is crazy corrupt and always has been. Like Mexico could be Japan with different organization. Like that's how hard they work and for how many hours. But so I lived in Mexico when I was a kid. And then we moved to America, and coming to America, which was like this shiny country full of cheerful people where all the floors are straight, like it's right angles, air conditioning, and just a cleanness and an honesty, and the idea that when they told me about like the president, like that it's a democracy. Mexico was a democracy, but everybody knew it was corrupt. And I got obsessed with the idea of the president of the United States. That's where it became a thing to me. And the president at the time was Nixon. And I cut a picture out of him out of the paper. And I taped it up next to
Nixon?
my bed. Yes, I loved Richard Nixon. When I was a little kid, I was so about Richard Nixon. And I wrote a letter to my abuelita, my grandmother.
Yeah.
And I sent her a picture of Nixon and said, this is the president of the United States. He's the greatest
He's the
man.
fucking
Greatest
man.
man in the country.
He's so cool.
He's the best man. I didn't know a single thing about him. And he had this serious face. And I had a dream. It's the first dream I remember. I don't know if you remember dreams from when you were a kid at all. You ever had a dream that you still remember?
I'm not sure that I do.
So I remember one dream. I was in my bedroom was in the front of our house, so you looked out at the front of our house, and I was asleep, and it was like a Sunday morning, and I heard a band, like a marching band, and I looked outside, and it was Nixon, like walking up my street, just no spectators.
Yeah.
Just him walking up, followed by a marching band, boom, boom, ba-dum, bum. And I came out on the front yard. We had this walkway, and he got down on one knee and he said, "Louie," and I ran into his arms.
What the fuck? Damn, you love Nixon.
I loved him so much.
Damn.
Isn't that crazy? I've never told anybody that.
How heartbroken
I've never told anybody that in my life. And so,
Louie.
Louie.
Like, senor.
And it's funny. There's only
Presidente, senor.
the idea of his joy, because Nixon was such a miserable man that his joyful side was very rare. There's only one time I've ever seen it on film. And it's when he's playing piano. He's in a tuxedo, and I think he's at his daughter's wedding. And he was a concert pianist. He was very good. And he's playing piano and he plays some big crescendo and he's got this big dumb grin on his face. And I think maybe I had seen that because that's the only that grin. Every time I see it, I'm in that dream. So, but my parents saw that I had these pictures of him next to my bed, and they're like, "He's not a good.
He's not
guy."
that great.
He's not, because Watergate was happening, and every night my parents were sitting in front of the TV, this little fucking color TV, watching Watergate, watching the hearings, and it was like shh,
And
it
you're
was
like, "How's
serious.
it going?"
Yeah, I'm like,
How's my guy doing?
how's my boy going?
How's he doing?
Yeah. I'm like, fucking Ed Muskie, fuck you.
And they're like, he's crying. He's on TV crying. You're
Yes.
like, shit.
Yeah, and then I remember watching live. There's two things I remember that were like national events. I remember Walter Cronkite saying that America and Russia had just done something called Apollo-Soyuz. We had Apollo spacecraft going around, and they had Soyuz capsules. And one night they met, like they saw each other. It was an accident. And they thought, what if we could dock? So they went home and they started this project, Let's Dock. This is back in the 70s, in the middle of the Cold War. So they built a dock, and they had to do it together.
Yeah.
The Russian and the American space program. And then they went up in two separate rockets, found each other in the middle of space, and docked, and then drank vodka and shook hands and hung out.
Christ.
And Walter Cronkite told me on tells the only one up watching TV, and he said, if the Apollo-Soyuz capsules are flying over North America, and if it's clear where you are in the Northeast, if you look up, you might see them passing overhead. And I went outside and I laid on my on the grass for hours, and I saw. He said it would be a red light and a white light blinking together. And
you
I
see
saw
it?
them. Saw it.
Oh man!
So that and watching Nixon resign.
How pumped were you?
With the Apollo-Soyuz thing, I mean, still, it lives for me. And Nixon's resignation was just like a depressing, destroying, sad, fucked up thing. It was just like, what now? Like there was like an unbroken chain from George Washington to him. Like if you go back, like LBJ notwithstanding, and everyone was proud of what he did with civil rights or whatever, there was an unbroken chain, even if you're fucking Democrat, Republican, or Whig Democrat or whatever, Whig Republic, all of those, it was still the U.S. president. And then this guy fucking dropped the motherfucking ball. It's crazy. In disgrace, he left the office and left a mess of just like, this is all bullshit now. This is just all fucking crooked bullshit. What is the point? And the economy was tanking. And then here's Gerald Ford, who was just a kind of like oval-headed, simple dude. He made little moves. He handled it perfectly. I mean, he did one thing that was extremely, extremely unpopular and fucked up, which is that he pardoned Richard Nixon. It was the first thing he did. Everyone wanted to go after Nixon and keep investigating and catch him and send him to jail. He could have gone to prison for what he did. And Ford knew that if he pardoned him, he would never win an election. There was no way he was going to be reelected.
Yeah.
Because everyone would just say, well, you guys are just fucking dirty. You're just pardoning each other. Yeah. But he knew it was the right thing to do. We needed to get there. He said, our national nightmare needs to end. And he ended it. He dead-ended the investigations. He said, Nixon, and then there's this, I remember Steve Martin, who was the comedian then. He was my first favorite comedian. And Cosby really was. Cosby was first. As a kid, I listened to Cosby records constantly. But Steve Martin was the first person that made me think I could be a comedian because he was so weird. But he did a bit where during that time, because they showed these footage of Nixon on the beach in California after he went home. And Steve Martin says, I feel bad for Nixon. He goes, I know you're not supposed to because he did wrong. But every time I see him on the beach with his big old shorts on and his metal detector, and he just drew a picture of Nixon just alone on the beach. And, Nixon stayed he did these interviews with David Frost, the Frost-Nixon interviews. And he opened up about himself a lot. And he stayed available to every president after him, would call on him. He was a great resource. Fascinating guy. And when Patricia died, he saw him at her funeral just crying his eyes out. Very human guy, Nixon. Very human. Showed his feelings. And he wasn't cool and he wasn't hip and he wasn't like, I feel your pain, Clinton. He just was an open sore. And I think he gave that. And I said that in the last time.
Yeah.
But so... Ford pardoned him, and then Squeaky Fromm tried to kill him. She shot at him. Did you know that he a woman named Squeaky Fromm?
That's the first time I'm hearing this.
Squeaky Fromm was in the Manson family. Squeaky Fromm, the Manson family, you know who that is, right?
Yes.
Charles Manson, she was one of his Manson,
she was one of the ladies.
The women who killed and men who killed Roman Polanski's wife and unborn child. Squeaky Fromm found a way to get to him, and she took a shot at him with a rifle. And there was one guy, some cop, who hit the rifle away, saved his life, and that guy was gay. Just a piece of news.
Nice.
And I always combine that guy in my head to the guy on the plane, Flight 93. It was a gay rugby player. It was one of the guys who said,
"Let's roll, guys."
Let's roll. Yeah. Okay. So gay people are all heroes. Gay dads are the best.
Flight 93 got shot down.
What's that?
Flight 93 got blown up with a missile.
No, I know.
Yeah.
It was the missile that it went on after, and it hit the moon. It kept going through it. It hit the plane. So Ford.
Carter.
So Ford runs with Bob Dole as the vice president.
I only know Bob Dole, just Norm Macdonald. That's it.
Bob Dole.
That's it.
There's a great documentary about presidential debates. It's one of the best documentaries. It's like a PBS documentary about presidential debates. And they talked to a lot of the guys, the real guys. It's like PBS or something. Bob Dole debated Walter Mondale, who was Jimmy Carter's guy, his vice president. And they asked Mondale about this moment. They're talking about war and military, and Bob Dole said, "Well, the Democrats they love war." It was World War II. That was a Democrat war, and he said that, and then they cut to Mondale going like this, and he said, then they cut to Mondale in the documentary. It's 6:00.
Is that real?
Country, yeah. You got to know it's 6:00.
Is it The Purge? What is this? They blare this at... I was like, this is terrifying. We're not coming back to the woods.
I drank too much coffee.
So Walter Mondale and Norm Macdonald are having the debate.
So he's debating Norm Macdonald. And Dole says, this is World War II, that was a Democrat war. And Mondale says in the documentary, I knew we were going to win that was it. That was the moment that won the election. So that's apparently...
It used to be like that. It used to be one gaffe. That was it. Like fucking, wasn't it Quayle couldn't spell something?
Yes. But Dean. What's his name?
No.
Dean. Bye.
Meanwhile...
Hart with a woman on his knee on
a
yacht.
What was that?
Gary Hart was supposed to be the president of the United States. Yeah. He was a Kennedy-like, beautiful-looking guy. He was a Democrat from, I don't remember what state Gary Hart was from, but he was beloved. And then they found a picture of him on a yacht in Bimini with a girl on his knee that wasn't his wife. See ya. That was the end of him. And Bob Dole, by the way, was a war hero.
Yeah.
He was in some horrible hill in Europe. And he was one of those guys where when a medic found him, he just took some of his blood and put an M on his forehead, which means morphine. And all that is to tell anybody coming by,
drug him, he's dead.
Just give him more morphine. Yeah. He's not going to make it. I don't have any on me. So, and then they sent Bob Dole home to Kansas. And his father, get up, Rosie, get up there. His father owned a drugstore. And they would just take him to the drugstore, and he was just like this, and they'd just lean him against just let him sit in the corner. And nobody thought he could hear because he looked so fucked up. And some neighbor pointed right at him. Some neighbor sitting at the ice cream counter, the drugstore, pointed at Dole and said to his friend, I would kill myself if that was me.
Oh, no.
And Dole heard this, and it was the most pitiful moment in his life. And it was the moment that turned him around because he realized I gotta start working out. I can't. Yeah. I'm so close. Somebody just said that if they were me, they would kill themselves.
Yeah.
And he felt so sorry for himself. But the next thought was, it's time for me to start. And he became almost twice president. I met Dole. I've met some weird people. I met him. I was a writer at Conan, and Dole was a guest. And I remember thinking at the time, fuck Bob Dole. He's the one guy I would be rude to him. You know, like you fantasize. Yeah. I wouldn't even be nice to that guy. I would be rude to that guy if I met him. And I was standing outside the studio, and the elevator's open, and out comes Bob Dole with no entourage. Like you picture, he was at the time, he was like the fucking Senate Majority Leader, and he came out alone. He held a pen in his right hand always, because his right hand was crippled,
and that's why he would shake with his left.
Yeah, because he didn't want you to reach for his right, and he didn't want you to be embarrassed. So he held a pen there, and you'd see it. So
that's thoughtful.
So you'd ask for his left hand. Yes.
Isn't that the worst when you shake someone's hand? They have like
and they
one
go, sorry,
finger?
in World War II. So
you go, well, now I feel gross.
Yeah. So he walks out of the elevator, and I'm standing there, and he just walks right up to me, and he goes, "Hey, I'm Bob Dole." And I go, yeah, you don't have to. There's a producer. I'll get a producer. You know,
I'll help you.
I'll
help you.
You don't stop at me. Like I'm telling him to just keep walking. Yeah. And he goes, well, what's your name? My name's Louie. He goes, what do you do? And I go, I'm a writer. I'm a comedy writer. He goes, that's hard, boy. That's hard. That's a hard job. Trying to be funny. That's a damn hard job. How'd you come to that? And I go, stand-up comedy. Oh, that guy, that's even harder. Yeah, comedy, I got to really respect you. He just stood there and talked to me.
Yeah.
And I said, where are you coming from? He goes, well, I just had to give a speech at this thing. And, luckily I got to go early because I'm in the D's because my name's Dole, you know what I mean? Just made a few cheap jokes. And he let the fucking conversation have an arc. And then he went like, will you tell me who I should speak to? Like he did the whole, and I introduced him to the producer, and I was like, I love Bob Dole. I love Bob Dole. He's my favorite guy in the world. All right. Carter wins, and Carter was the first truly liberal president. Like he was such a liberally minded president. Jack Kennedy had liberal politics, but he was also about being the first Catholic, first Irish Catholic president in the United States. And he was about his dad bought him the election, just bought it with a suitcase of money. And he was a powerful fucking guy from a legacy of smugglers. Yep. And but Jimmy Carter was a farmer, a peanut farmer from Georgia, who rose to be governor of Georgia because he was a conscientious guy and he got involved in local politics and he made his way up. He was like John Adams. He was just a guy who saw problems, saw ways to solve them, and he was really about helping people. He was really about that was his heart, I'm saying, right? And his brother Billy. So the saddest thing in the world is Billy Carter, because Billy was a joke in America when I was a kid. He was just a fun. They had Billy Beer they had a brand of beer named after him, and he died alcohol poisoning.
Jesus,
he was just a known drunk.
A beer for him.
Yes, he was just a known drunk idiot that everybody made fun of. And I saw one interview with Jimmy where he talked about Billy, and he was very bitter about it. He said Billy was a very wise, smart, and gentle soul who never drank his whole life. He just wasn't a drinker. And when I became president, it killed him. Because people went down, they got interested in who's the president's brother.
Started interviewing him and shit.
Him, and he had these little country wisdom, and people liked it. So they started printing his things.
But then, he started
going on speaking tours. And he starts getting used by people. I could use Billy Carter. And he's doing speeches and he's on the road and he starts drinking because that's the lifestyle and it actually helps you get through it. And he became an alcoholic. And he says, I mean, Jimmy said in this interview, like, they killed my brother, these people. They killed my brother.
Can't do the road without booze.
No, it's hard, but you need to learn how to do it.
No.
You're going to die.
I'd like to be
How old was Billy Carter when he died? How old was Billy Carter when he
fucking
died?
jinx me.
Let me know when not jinx you, warn you. There's a fucking difference. Fucking idiot. Jinx.
You gonna jinx me?
It's like you go to a doctor, he's like, you're going to get pancreatic cancer if you don't change your diet. And you're like, what are you, jinxing me?
That's a bit of a jinx.
No,
that's a jinx.
No, it's not. It's a fucking useful
I would be
warning.
like, I've never even heard of pancreatic cancer. You just brought that into
Bill
my world.
Hicks died of pancreatic cancer.
Billy Carter was 51 when he died.
Okay, how old are you?
34.
You've got how many years between when you do the math? Look up the math on YouTube, on Google. Google, how much is 51 minus
17.
You got 17 years left unless you stop drinking on the road. 17
That's pretty
years left.
good.
Okay, if that's how many you want. I'm 54. You die younger than me. Okay. Jimmy Carter.
Everybody always says
Here's
he
how
sucked.
liberal Jimmy Carter
Everybody
was.
said he sucked.
What?
Everybody says Jimmy Carter
Yeah, that's
sucked.
the way they talk about folks. It's just a stamp.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter did a few really
He put
courageous
solar
things.
panels on
Okay,
the White
first of
House.
all, they had the fucking so there was in San Francisco, Harvey Milk was running for mayor or for whatever, and they had this thing Prop 2 or something. It was this anti-gay bill in California, and it was a huge like hot button fucking like stay away from it kind of thing. And it was like whatever it was like yes, no on 2 meant stop this gay anti-gay thing. And there's this great footage of Jimmy Carter at a rally and he gives a speech and then he goes off and then someone gets to him because he went, whoa, no on 2. You got to go no on 2. Like he came out heavy for gay rights, which was big back then.
Yeah.
So he's president.
That was huge. I mean, they were like Hillary was voting against it in
Yes.
2013.
That's right. Obama till fucking
Yeah,
to the last second.
2013.
Yes.
Or it was either 11
No,
or
Obama was like, I don't think 2 men, and then they passed the thing. He was like, oh no,
I liked it.
My daughter said it's okay.
Like, I don't want those fruits getting married.
Yeah. So Jimmy Carter, way ahead of the game. A great thing about Jimmy Carter is that I'd always heard this, that there's 2 weird things about him. One is that he caught a fucking a fly ball at a game, which is really rare.
Yeah.
You're a president. At the time he was a former president. The odds of a former president catching it's insane.
Yeah.
There's something weird about Jimmy Carter because also I always heard this thing that he saw a UFO and that he'll tell you if you ask him, but he doesn't like talk about it, but he will tell you. And so there's this movie out now called Phenomenon, not the John Travolta thing. It's a documentary about UFOs, and I don't know how real it is.
Yeah.
It's all kinds of stories. It comes across really real. So did Close Encounters. I mean, I don't know, cinema can create a lot of illusions, so I don't know, but it was compelling. But the most compelling thing, because you talk to a guy, he said what he said, right?
Yeah.
So in the extras, not in the movie, but if you watch the extras, I don't know why this isn't in the movie, but there's some kid in a wheelchair, like, blowing on a one of those guys like this, and you have to wait while he goes, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? One of those guys went to a book signing of Jimmy Carter, and you see Jimmy. This is footage. Jimmy's signing books, and then they bring over a wheelchair guy, and he says, "Can I ask you a question?" And he wasn't taking questions, but he's like, "Sure," because he's in a wheelchair, which means he's a saint. Only really great people are in wheelchairs. There's no assholes in wheelchairs. It doesn't exist. So he asks Jimmy Carter, "Is it true that you saw a UFO?" And Jimmy Carter goes, "Yes." And he asks him, "What was it like?" And he said, "It was, it's exactly how they're described."
Yeah.
It's like, it was a strange pill-shaped thing. It was floating, not making any sound. And then it just vanished. It just took off. And he said, when you became president, did you tell them, the State Department? He said, yeah. And they said, just don't worry about it.
Don't even worry about it, dude.
Yes. Jimmy Carter also put on a sweater, and he made a speech where he said, yes, we have an oil crisis, but please just wear a sweater, turn the heat down. He's like, we got to change the way we live. People don't like to be told that in America.
No.
He's like, we got to change the way we live. There's less oil. And we're having to blow up countries in the Middle East because of the oil. It's a problem.
It was
the first energy crisis, and there was gas lines around the block. There was people couldn't get a fucking tank of gas.
It's not America's...
piss off Americans?
Yeah. It's not America's fault. I mean, that's a tale as old as time. When a world leader's like, even they're doing it now with the inflation. They're like, yeah, just don't eat as much. It's like, you guys are eating.
Yes, I agree with that.
That's the part. That's the hard part. It's like, you fuckers.
Just crank the handle.
It's like, let them eat cake. It's the same thing.
People aren't going to start moving slower. You're not going to take the human race and say, everybody just...
Yeah. Especially
all of us.
But you have to do it. If the world
China,
leaders...
India, I know you're trying to like get out of like poverty. I know you're trying to like turn on air conditioning so you don't get malaria every 5 minutes. But just a little...
Yeah.
Just put a little... So it's just inevitable. And I think the problem is that you got your nerds. This is American history. Nerds and cowboys. Nerds figure shit out. Cowboys make shit happen. But there's a divide now. Climate denial goes two ways. The cowboys are pretending the shit's not changing, and of course it's changing. And the nerds are pretending that folks can just that it's a morality. It's like we can just all just quiet down, turn the lights off. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. If they all came to the table and said, yes, this is happening, but we're not going to slow down, then the cowboys would fix the fucking, there'd be a big vacuum cleaner going.
Yeah,
people are talking about terraforming Mars. Do that here. I'm talking straight out of my ass.
No, but
I have no idea what I'm talking about here. I have no idea.
My buddy Steve Gerby.
Uninformed opinion.
Gerby's always talks about it, where he's like, I mean, it's not his opinion. He's just the first guy that brought it to me. Is like, we need to burn the resources we have now to figure out how to fucking stop it. Like we can't turn it down now.
Right.
It's too late. We need to work.
Well, like I read a great interview with the guy in the Wall Street
Probably
Journal.
Fucked that up for Gerby's. My bad.
No, the guy this guy in the Wall Street Journal. He's a Pennsylvania guy who is a big natural gas guy. Him and his brother started buying natural gas, and they're like the biggest guys. And he's a big proponent for it as an environmentalist. He says it burns way cleaner, and it's the road to these next things. Yeah. He says you can't, every time that you regulate against natural gas, you make people burn coal. The other thing is, do you know what the last time I looked, the number 4 polluting industry in the whole world? Number 4.
Bitcoin.
No, Bitcoin's big.
Farming. Isn't farming number 1?
No, number 4 is the energy, the fucking carbon from creating solar panels.
Oh no!
Because the Chinese do it very cheaply. Here, to make a solar panel, like the wafer, takes a huge amount of energy, and because of the regulations here, we make them very slowly and carefully, making sure everybody's okay. And it takes a long time, and it's very expensive. But the Chinese just use coal and pour it and make these things. They're super cheap, and then we buy them. And we're buying so many of them because of Obama's policy that it's through the roof. It's killing the environment to make solar panels. It's look, Elon Musk, he makes electric cars. So you know how cap and trade works? So cap and trade means that if you're an auto manufacturer, you have, I'm making up numbers, but let's say you can put out 75 million tons of car. You can make cars that will create 75 million tons of carbon. That's the cap. Okay. Now, if you manage to actually get under 75 and you only put out 50 tons, you can sell 25 tons to another car manufacturer. Okay. So a car manufacturer that's making 75 tons can actually make 100 because he bought that way. You just know that there's 3 manufacturers. They're putting out 75 each, and that's tolerable. And so the way to keep them on it's an incentive. You only put out 25 tons. Congratulations. You can sell that to GM and they can put out. So Elon Musk's cars have none. They put out 0 tons and they sell 100% of so they actually are they're helping more carbon go into the atmosphere. And that's how they turn a profit. That's their biggest profit point. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
That's all right.
I have no idea.
Fuck it. It's interesting.